Once oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood is going to transport that oxygen to the tissues. Now, how much oxygen actually gets to the tissues is dictated by how much oxygen is in the blood and how much blood we're sending to the tissues. So we can measure basically how much oxygen is in the blood, and let's say that there is 200 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood. And we can measure how much blood's being sent to the tissue by measuring our cardiac output. And so let's say that there is 5 liters of blood per minute is our cardiac output. That means that 5 times our 200 is equal to 1,000 milliliters of oxygen per minute is being sent to the cells, right? That's how much is going to be sent based off of this cardiac output. We change cardiac output, we change how much oxygen is being sent to the tissues. Now, we said earlier that oxygen was not very soluble. So how much oxygen is dissolved in the blood plasma is actually very low. It's only about 3 milliliters per liter of blood, and that's not a whole lot. Most of the oxygen that's transported in the blood is transported attached to a molecule known as hemoglobin. Now, hemoglobin is a structure, it's a protein that has basically 4 globular protein subunits called globulins. Okay, and so there are what we call 2 alpha units, and there are 2 beta units. So these are my 4 globular subunits here. Now, in the center of each one of these globular units is a heme group. And in that is basically an iron molecule. Okay, so we'll write that. That's an iron. Okay, now one oxygen can bind to each one of those iron molecules. So each heme or hemoglobin molecule protein is responsible or capable of transporting 4 oxygen molecules. Okay, now that's very, very important because let's look at how much oxygen your body tissues use or need. Let's say that your tissues use about 250 milliliters of oxygen per minute. And let's assume that your cardiac output is 5 liters of blood per minute. So based off of that, right, how much would the concentration of oxygen need to be per liter of blood? Based off of that, you would need a concentration of 50 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood, right? But we said that in a normal circumstance, right, how much oxygen gets dissolved in blood plasma? That's 3 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood. Remember, this is dissolved oxygen. Okay. So based off of that, if we're sending 5 liters of blood per minute, what is getting to our tissues? Well, 5 liters of blood per 3 milliliters per liter, that gives us 15 milliliters of oxygen per minute. So we have 15 milliliters of oxygen per minute, but our tissues are needing or using 250 milliliters of oxygen per minute. That's not enough, right? Let's see what happens if we allow hemoglobin to be a part of this sort of equation. Now, under normal circumstances, normal hemoglobin saturation levels, hemoglobin is able to carry about 197 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood. And then we still have our 3 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood that's dissolved, right? So this is equivalent to the hemoglobin or oxyhemoglobin because it's attached to oxygen. And this is our dissolved oxygen. So in total, we have 200 milliliters of oxygen per liter of blood. Okay. Now, under normal circumstances, right, keep our cardiac output the same of 5 liters of blood per minute, and that gives us a total of 1,000 milliliters of oxygen per minute to the tissues. So 1,000 milliliters. That's way better than just the 15. So because of hemoglobin, we are able to transport a lot more oxygen to the tissues. And without a properly functioning hemoglobin, right, we would end up in a hypoxic situation, or our tissues would end up in a hypoxic situation because they wouldn't be getting enough oxygen.